Hey friends, we just got our first peek at the upcoming Commander Master set, checking out the new phase commanders from the pre-constructed decks from that set. So we're going to check them out, and I'm going to give my first impressions of each of these new commanders. Alright, we begin with the phase commander of the Colorless deck. This is Zhulodok Void Gorger. This is 5 and a Devoid symbol, which means you have to spend colorless mana to cast it. It's a legendary creature Eldrazi, 7/4, and colorless spells you cast from your hand with mana value 7 or greater have Cascade. Cast a card with Cascade. It says when you cast one, exile cards from the top card of your library until you exile a non-land card that costs less mana value. You may cast it without paying its mana cost. Put the other cards that were exiled on the bottom of your library in a random order, then do this process again. So this precon is going to be focusing on colorless Eldrazi, which is going to be a first for pre-constructed decks. In fact, this is going to be the first ever colorless pre-constructed deck in general. So this is exciting new grounds, especially because colorless decks kind of all look the same in my opinion. With a very limited card pool, you're basically always going to be an artifact deck, because most of the colorless cards happen to be artifacts, and you're going to have top-end haymakers that are going to be Eldrazi, the Eldrazi Titans most likely. So having a precon deck, which is going to be injecting a bunch of new cards to the format, is probably going to make a new subcategory of colorless decks, which is going to be focusing on Eldrazi. And I'm really excited to see how they're going to flesh out colorless and give it a new direction other than just being artifacts and Eldrazi. And the payoff here is really, really good. Cascading twice for your 7 mana value spells, which are obviously going to be probably going to be Eldrazi spells, but they could be also be just very expensive artifact spells as well, means you're going to be getting a lot of card advantage and mana advantage, both at the same time. Obviously, you're not really sure what you're going to be cascading into unless you have some top deck manipulation like Scroll Rack and Stasis Divining Top, which I think are going to be really excellent cards for a Zhulodok deck. But no matter what you're going to be hitting with this, you're always going to be generating a ton of value. So the only other real comparison for an Eldrazi deck in colorless is going to be Kozilek the Great Distortion in my opinion. And basically any of the Eldrazi Titans that aren't banned in Commander will do, and they're going to have a really nice function. But my personal favorite up until this point has always been Kozilek the Great Distortion. It costs more mana, it's 10 mana instead of 7, but the payoff here is really good. You get to draw up to 7 cards, so if you're empty-handed you get to draw 7 cards. That's fantastic. It's a 12/12 with Menace, so it can two-shot opponents very easily. And it has a buttload of interaction because you can discard cards, namely all that excess ramp cards that you use to cast your Kozilek, to counter your opponent's spells. Like if there's a board wipe that you don't want to have resolve, you can counter it potentially if you have the right mana value card in your hand. And it's just really, really effective at controlling the board while putting a very fast clock on your opponents and drawing you cards. I really like Kozilek a whole bunch. Zhulodok, I think, is going to be kind of like very fun in a very different way. Kozilek's all about interaction and controlling the board once you have your 12/12 Menacer on the battlefield, and Zhulodok is more about non-interaction, more like deal with me, I'm the problem. I mean, Kozilek also you have to deal with, it's going to be the problem as well because it's 12/12 of Menace, but I think it's opposite ends of the spectrum. Kozilek's card draw and interaction. Zhulodok is basically card advantage and mana advantage, so you need to have a handful of 7 drops to keep cascading and using its ability. So I like both options. Currently, I still kind of lean towards Kozilek. I think Kozilek might be a little bit more oppressive though. When Kozilek is in full gear, it feels kind of hopeless trying to run up against them because you can counter basically anything that can stop your game plan. Whereas Zhulodok, is going to be unstoppable in a different way. If your opponents don't have a removal for Zhulodok, and you're starting to double cascade off your Eldrazi's, your Meteor Golems, or whatever, your high cost spells, you're going to run away with the game pretty quickly as well too. So it's pick your poison here. Both of them are going to be big haymakers. They're very splashy. They're very deal with this or be eradicated. And I think Zhulodok's going to be more popular because who doesn't love double cascading stuff? There's a reason Maelstrom Wanderer has been an endearing fan favorite for so long. But I think Kozilek is going to be my personal choice if I really want to be oppressive on the table. Moving on though, we have the new Sliver commander. This is Sliver Gravemother. This is a 5-drop, 5-color Wooburg, 6/6 legendary creature Sliver, and it says the legend rule doesn't apply to slivers you control. Each Sliver creature card in your graveyard has Encore X, where X is mana value, and it itself has Encore 5. And for those who don't know, Encore means you can spend the required mana and exile this card from your graveyard, and then for each opponent, create a token copy that attacks that opponent this turn if able, and they gain haste, and you sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step, activate only as a sorcery. So if you have 3 opponents in a 4-player game, you can spend to Encore 5, you can spend 5 mana, exile Sliver Gravemother from the graveyard, and then you have 3 copies, 6/6 copies of Sliver Gravemother, and they're all attacking a different opponent, and then you sacrifice it at end step. It's really powerful, really good, and this is going to be basically Slivers meets Reanimator, kind of, in a really unique way. We have a lot of different 5-color Sliver commanders, and a lot of different options. I don't think Sliver Gravemother is going to be the strongest, not by a long shot. I think that category goes to either Sliver Overlord or maybe Sliver Queen. But it is definitely a new take and an interesting take on a fan favorite. Sliver Overlord is all about tutoring and gaining control of opposing slivers. So the first sliver is all about Cascade, and like I said, everybody loves Cascade. Probably the fairest of the bunch. Sliver Legion, also incredibly fair too. It's kind of like a coat of arms for your slivers, making everything really large. There's another one, I think Hive Lord, that makes everything indestructible. So where the Sliver Gravemother end up going, I feel like people who are going to be deep into slivers probably are going to be more excited about the first sliver because Cascade is very exciting. But I mean, Encore is really exciting too, so I'm not really sure. I think Sliver Overlord, Sliver Queen are going to be more powerful, and Sliver Gravemother is going to be a new take. It's going to be the graveyard take on slivers, and no matter what sliver deck you're going to be running as the helm, you're going to be putting the other ones in the 99 anyway. So if you're not running Sliver Gravemother in your command zone, then you're probably going to be running it in the 99, and it's just super fun and exciting. I love Encore. It's a really fun mechanic, and I love the idea of removing the legend rule so your Encore works better with legendary slivers. And I think possibly the best option to Encore is probably going to be Sliver Legion. Just imagine having triple coat of arms being encored for a lethal attack. Like I can't imagine anybody surviving that. Even if you just encore the Sliver Legion and you have Sliver Gravemother on the battlefield, that's what each Sliver Legion is giving all other slivers +3/+3, and they're all 7/7, so they're all swinging for 10 at the very least, at the very minimum, but it's going to be much higher. I think I'm doing the math right. But yeah, super exciting. I like this card a lot, and I know a lot of people love slivers, so I'm excited for them to finally get a precon. Moving on, we have Commodore Guff. This is going to be Jeskai Planeswalkers. So we have a Jeskai Superfriends precon deck. This is a legendary Planeswalker Guff. 5 starting loyalty. It has a passive ability. At the beginning of your end step, put a loyalty counter on another target planeswalker you control. It has a +1 loyalty ability. Create a 1/1 red wizard creature token with tap to add 1 red mana. Spend this to only cast a planeswalker spell. And the -3 ability, you draw X cards, and Commodore Guff deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of planeswalkers you control. So one end, it's going to be generating mana. The other mode is going to be drawing you cards and dealing damage. And then just once per end step, you're also going to be putting an extra loyalty counter on your planeswalkers. So this is kind of exactly what you want for a Super Friends commander. This is a Super Friends commander who it itself is a planeswalker, so that's a flavor win. It's Jeskai, so it's not 5 color. You don't have access to green, which is probably the strongest color for Super Friends, just because you have like the doubling season effects and whatnot. And you don't have access to black, but you do have access to blue, red, and white, and 3 colors is a lot to build a Super Friends deck, especially in 2023, where Super Friends are a dime a dozen these ways. There's so many planeswalkers and not enough space for them. Now, comparing Commodore Guff to other Planeswalker Super Friends leaders, Atraxa Praetor's Voice, I think, is not going to be dethroned anytime soon. This gives you access to 4 colors, just not red, so you don't have the Chandras, you don't have the Boluses, for example, which is important, but it comes on a 4/4 flying vigilance, death touch, lifelink body, which is just fantastic at protecting your planeswalkers. And also, it essentially puts a loyalty counter on all your planeswalkers every single end step, not just one of them. However, it doesn't have any cool activated abilities otherwise, so I think Atraxa is going to be just more popular and more powerful overall, but Commodore Guff gives you access to red, and that's really exciting, and it gives you a new flavor on it, and it itself is a planeswalker. If you go 5 color, you have stuff like the Prismatic Bridge, which just lets you poop out planeswalkers once each turn. And in Jeskai itself, I've seen people run Narset Enlightened Master as their Super Friends commander, and Narset is basically always going to be broken because you can flip basically up to 4 planeswalkers from the top of your library onto the battlefield, especially with cards like Scroll Rack or any top deck manipulation. It's pretty easy to do that. Brainstorm effects as well. I think Narset is also going to be stronger than Commodore Guff. Sad to say, but I think Commodore Guff is going to be the de facto Jeskai Super Friends commander because at least it's more thematic and more on point with a Super Friends theme. So I like this. It's a not overpowered or anything Super Friends commander. There are going to be stronger options out there for it, but it's thematic, and for people who are not interested or just want a different route for planeswalkers outside of Atraxa or like 5 color, Commodore Guff is going to give you a lot of good incentives to go Jeskai instead. And then finally, we have the last face card commander. This is Anikthea, Hand of Erebos. This is Abzan Enchantress. So it's a 5 mana Abzan 4/4 legendary enchantment creature demigod with menace. Other enchantment creatures you control have menace, and whenever Anikthea enters the battlefield or attacks, exile up to 1 target non-aura enchantment card from your graveyard, create a token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 3/3 black zombie creature in addition to its other types. So this is repeatable non-aura enchantment reanimation. So basically, I would imagine the theme of this deck would be self-mill, which black and green are very good at doing. Milling high-powered enchantments that you really want to cast without paying their exorbitant mana costs. And then just reanimating them for free, for mana free at least, with Anikthea and attacking with her and all that good stuff. So this is a very new take on Enchantress. Enchantress sees a lot of support throughout the years of Magic. It's one of the most popular archetypes, and you can build it a billion different ways essentially, but very rarely do you get to see Enchantress go attack focused. And I'm not saying Anikthea is going to be super attack focused. I think it's very much more like self-mill reanimate. And I think that's actually unique in its own regard too. But you do need to at least attack with Anikthea to get any value out of her. Or blink her at the very least. But you don't really get to see any enchantresses go full self-mill / attacking themed. Most of them are going to be dirtling around, like Sithis Harvest Hand, that's a very popular one, or Tuvasa or Estrid. Those ones don't really want to be attacking too much, and they just want to draw cards as they're playing more and more enchantments. Whereas Anikthea does want to be attacking, at least with the commander, or blinking a lot. You could go for a blink theme. To get her a triggered ability as much as possible, and you want to be self-milling to always make sure you have something to reanimate. The other Abzan Enchantress option that I know of is Myrkul, Lord of Bones, but that's a very different style of Enchantress. It's more like an Aristocrats, where you're going to be sacrificing creatures and then turning them into enchantments that re-enter the battlefield, so you get more sacrifice fodder and more enter the battlefield triggers. So very different, but I think Anikthea is going to be very interesting. I think it's going to be exciting. I think self-mill Enchantress is a kind of new direction. I think we've been past the oversaturation point for Enchantress in general, but this is a cool new direction for it at least, and gives it a cool twist that we haven't seen before. And then finally, we also got previewed a couple new cards from the main set Commander Masters, including Capture from Jingzhu. I'm sorry if I butchered that. It's a new reprint, a much sought after reprint. Take an extra turn after this one. I think it's been reprinted like twice before, but it is very expensive. Another really expensive card that is very welcome as a reprint is Selvala Heart of the Wilds. It has a whole bunch of new art frames and whatnot. It has foil etched like capture, but it also has this cool like side profile borderless thingy going on, which is really fun. Personal Tutor also got reprinted, a bunch of new versions of that too. And Jewel Lotus is also seeing a reprint, the first one since Commander Legends, I think in like 2019 or 2020 or something like that. I don't know, time has no meaning. And we see a bunch of new card arts for that as well. So that's really exciting. I think Commander Masters is going to have a lot of really cool stuff for Commander players like me. And let me know what you think of the new face commanders. Are you excited to pick up any of the new precons? Let me all know that in the comments section below. And if you like this sort of stuff, be sure to like and subscribe. I'm going to be covering all the new Commander related content as it is previewed. And we also have Commander Clash, the podcast, and budget commanders and shorts and all that good stuff as well on the channel. So, yep. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and until next time, friends, see ya!